This is Agriculture Today, and I'm Shelby Varner with the K-State Radio Network. Starting off today's show is K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien with an update on the grain market, where he shares about topped-out rallies in the futures and the impact we could see from an upcoming USDA report. K-State water resource engineer Jonathan Aguilar keeps today's show rolling with his reminders for growers with irrigation systems to get them prepared for cold temperatures and freezing water. Chip Redmond, K-State meteorologist, concludes the show with his report of fluctuating temperatures, breezy conditions, and unlikely chances of precipitation. That and more is coming up ahead. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we start our Friday show with the grain market update from K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. Daniel, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Shelby. Appreciate it.
Daniel, starting off our market conversation, as we commonly do, how are futures looking?
Well, futures have, after a time of rallies across the board, about the last week, have kind of topped out. We've seen some real volatility in the soybean market. Some days up 25 to 30 cents, and then days like yesterday where we ended up being down about that same amount. So it's interesting. We update these reports that we put out, the analysis that we do on a week-to-week basis, and after all the volatility that's happened, we're just about the same place as we were a week ago. So we're volatile and in general moving sideways until further notice. So interesting to see the numbers as they are. Again, we're D25 corn closed yesterday about 428 3/4, down about 6.5 cents. For me, we're looking at D's corn of 25 and comparing that to an uncrop risk tainted number a year from now. D's 26 corn harvest is about 463 3/4, so about 40 cents. So you wonder about to what degree is uncertainty about supply demand conditions next year worth? Well, apparently it's about 40 cents in the market. For soybeans had been higher, again, up about 40, 50 cents from where we were not that long ago, had jumped up for the November contract at 1091.5. Of course, now November is in delivery. That's the time when those that hold long and short positions seek to even up and to not make themselves vulnerable to delivery or not to deliver, whichever they want to do. They try to offset their positions. Well, sometimes they can, sometimes they can't, depending on the competitiveness of that market. So now we're looking at January 2026 as the lead contract, and that is over $11 at 11.08 yesterday. But again, on yesterday's trade, given the ups and downs of export news right now, euphoria that soybeans are moving on U.S. ships to China, and then news that the Chinese are shifting around their sources. So it was down 26.5 cents yesterday, had been up about that much or more earlier in the week. So just volatile now until things really get sorted out. And for Kansas hard red winter wheat, on yesterday's close, the D's contract settled at 522 1/4, down 17 cents. So again, not seeing a lot of direct trade from China for U.S. wheat in general, but the general tone of the world market is such that kind of had seen that. There have been some news reports out of Russia or from observers of Russia that talked about them increasing their exports in the coming year. Of course, Russia, Ukraine are both cash strapped in the middle of a shooting war. Literally, they have a real incentive to generate cash by selling whatever crops they produce. And that there were some rumors here recently that had come out. It is interesting to see. Again, D's 25 lead contract 522 1/4, but then July harvest, July 26 hard red winter wheat at 559. So it's about 35 or so, 35, 36 cents higher. And again, that's the I guess, how we might gauge the amount of uncertainty in the market from here out to July. That July is, again, somewhat higher than the current. So you got that, and no out of the ordinary stories with regard to carry. The wheat futures market for hard red still shows carries, but they're more like 4, 5, 6 cents as opposed to where they had been in the past, not too distant past of 7, 8, 9 or more or thereabouts in terms of carry from the D's to March to May and July. But so we kind of see that as it is. I would say that when you look at the ethanol cash corn prices, that they are in almost all states to the east, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Missouri, Ohio, and the like, you're seeing prices above $4 at ethanol plants. So that's some indication of either demand for ethanol on the one hand or the outcome of harvest, whether we're extremely plentiful or not. And so that's, I guess, a positive sign for cash corn markets going forward, and really probably an indicator of what the market at least thinks it's perceiving with regard to actual U.S. corn harvest results this go around. So interesting to watch. The cash markets, cash corn at elevators in Kansas, the highest bid, we had one or two bids over $4. Out in Garden City, the top bid about $4.16, several others about 10, 15 cents below. So at least some higher bids for cash corn. New crop bids for next year, highest also out there in the Garden City area, Southwest Kansas, about $4.60. Next highest bids $4.30 in Colby, $4.20 in Salina, and $4.30 in Hutchinson. So interesting now that I don't know that you can say we've turned our attention to next year, but some of the better bid opportunities that we're seeing in corn are their forward contract bids for next harvest. So go figure that. We're also watching, as part of the U.S.-China discussions, the pace of exports. And I think anybody that has grain sorghum in Kansas yet to harvest is hoping for a strong recovery in U.S.-China trade, and particularly with regard to grain sorghum. We do have some reports that have come out on the ag wires of China being active, bringing at least one load from the U.S. to China, and probably a harbinger, a signal of more to come. So as you and I have talked in past weeks, Shelby, that couldn't come at a better time for U.S. grain sorghum producers that are likely going to have, in a lot of cases, at least decent, if not pretty good harvest yields. And if there was some strength in the basis levels for grain sorghum here in Kansas, for them to consider selling into, that would be a great help for them, no doubt. Soybean bids, cash bids above $10 in the, at 10.28. Top bid in Pittsburgh area, 10.23. Salina, 10.18. Topeka, 10.13. In Hutchinson, out to the west. A lot of cases, we just don't grow a lot of soybeans, but what bids there are lower than that. And finally, for wheat, do see a cash bid in Salina, $4.52 is the top bid that at least I'd seen in the locations that we watch. $4.42 in Topeka and Hutchinson, and then thereabouts, $4.32 out to the west in Colby, and $4.22 in Pittsburgh. So it's interesting. In Southwest Kansas, I didn't see many bids. Of course, right now they're bringing in feed grains into those elevators. So it's kind of surprising in Southwest Kansas right now to not see a lot of wheat bids in some of these key locations, especially around the Garden City area. But again, we've got corn to deal with right now, and they just as soon not like to keep things, I guess, as direct and as simple as possible, and not have wheat coming into what's pretty strong outcome for corn. So interesting to watch.
And as we've been talking through reports, one report we've been waiting on and hopeful for, crop production report. And is that something we're going to see in a week?
The USDA came out this past week and indicated that although they were not going to meet the time frame on November 10th, which would be Monday, for a USDA WASDE report, they are aiming for the 14th. So there'll be both a crop production report and a WASDE report, which means in order to make the deadline for that, to have from the National Ag Statistics Service, to have crop production numbers, yield, production, et cetera. They're out in the field right now doing their measures and contacting farmers, although most farmers are pretty busy at the moment to fill out surveys. So no doubt that's happening, and then happening at this time. And then as we're speaking, or we're on the tail end of it probably, and then come, a week from today on the 14th, then we'll have that WASDE report. I think that there's a lot of potential for volatility come out of that report on both the supply side. Do we meet the expectations of generally lower corn yields and perhaps lower soybean yields coming into that November WASDE report now delayed? Will that come into play? How does the USDA gauge usage? It looks like ethanol usage has been pretty strong. We anticipate livestock feed usage probably still okay, although there's controversy with regard to foreign beef sales, but we won't get into that issue. That's a livestock issue more so. But and exports, we really haven't had specific information other than rumors, an article here or there as to what we've actually been shipping during this time. So when we do get the USDA reports coming back from the Foreign Ag Service with regard to export numbers, really am curious to see what's been happening for wheat during this time frame when we had the government out of the business in terms of making reports. And also if corn exports have kept up the pace, what's happened with soybeans and the like. So just a time when they're, again, with trade deals and expectations of movement or lack thereof from different countries coming into the market, and really no hard data from the USDA with regard to what's actually been happening. We're just primed for a time of surprise that could come a week from today in that report. So when that thing comes out, we'll bring the pre-report expectations into that. And then as soon as we can thereafter, that you and I and perhaps Guy Allen will get together and do a post-report discussion of where we're at now once we finally have harder data, and really from my point of view, what that may mean for post-harvest grain storage options. Yeah, because again, we have sizable amount of grain. Do we have enough demand up front and prospects down the road to store grain to wait for it, or is it a wiser move to go ahead and move it and move on to next year? I guess we'll try to answer that question.
Daniel, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you so much, Shelby. Take care.
That was K-State grain economist Daniel O'Brien. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we continue our show discussing getting ready for winter when it comes to irrigation systems with K-State Water Resource Engineer Jonathan Aguilar. Jonathan, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Jonathan, as we're thinking about winterizing irrigation systems, what's the first thing that comes to mind when we're thinking about those irrigation systems and it getting cold outside?
Well, the first thing that comes to me is that metal and water doesn't work very well during the winter time. That said, the water tends to expand, and it's unusually very strong when it expands. So anything that has water has to give way to that expansion. So first thing that I would probably say before we even get to those freezing temperature is make sure that you remove or flush out or drain any water in your system. Whether it is a center pivot system or a linear or a lateral system, or even just your typical flood system, or even the sprinkler system in your home. Make sure that you don't have any water in those lines, because when that water expands and we could not do anything about that water expanding when they freeze, it's going to burst anything that is on its way. That's how powerful that water is, and that freezing temperature is going to be. So first of all, drain anything that is being trapped in your system. That's the first thing to do. Then we could go now to the other things that needs to be done in your system, like making sure that the sand trap doesn't have any water in it as well. Those are things that could still have some water. And then also check the panel boxes. So you are now going to be less frequent in that field. So make sure that some of the things that you usually check are also being checked out. So check for loose connection, check the seals, and also the panel are properly locked. Make sure that the grounding connection and the coil are also good. Check for anything that is unusual or worn out. when you are not in the field, you might not see some things that are also dangling around, and the wind will catch it, and sooner or later, you will have another problem that you have to find. So try to secure anything that is dangling or is broken or is being caught by the wind, because we don't want them to be making any more issues later on in the season. And also try to drive check the drivetrain. Some of the connections between two systems, there might still be some water that are caught in between. And also don't make sure that there's no way that water could also be trapped. We understand that we might still get some snow or a freezing rain or something. Make sure that there's nothing there that can be trapped in between. So check all of those. Check for oil leaks. Make sure that all of the seals and of the gearboxes are secured. The oil leaks can also happen, and so we would like to reduce those wear and tear. And then also the knuckles and the wear, and also the shields. I know that there are some shields in some of those motors. Make sure that they are secure. Again, we're making sure that it is also safe from the wind that being caught up. Check the tire pressure as well, just to make sure that it is still upright when you find it. And speaking of upright, we would like to make sure that you parked it to parallel to your prevailing wind. So if the prevailing wind is southerly, coming from the south, make sure that it is either pointed north or pointed south. So that way we are reducing the possibility of it being toppled down or being taken by the wind to flip it by the wind.
Jonathan, as people are walking down their pivot systems and looking at things and making sure everything is cleaned out and ready for winter, is this also a great opportunity for people to write down what they might need for next season?
That is correct. Yeah, because this is also your opportunity to be able to check what needs to be done in your system. There are some, if you see things that you were just band-aiding during the season, this is the time to make sure that it is already secured later on. If we still have some nicer weather, actually some dealership could still be able to fix them, or at least it's in their to-do list right before the season starts again. So yes, make sure that you notice if you notice any band-aids that you did over the week, over the season. Make sure that it is you check it out and write it up so that you could make sure that it is ready for next season.
Are there some electrical aspects that maybe need to be checked out as well?
Yes, so electrical, as I mentioned, freezing and water doesn't and metal doesn't go well as the electricity as well. So make sure that if it is if it is powered by electric, make sure that you turn down or you turn off the main power supply so that you are not going to create any issue with anybody that touches them, particularly when you're not visiting them as often. Also, make sure that the connections for all of those wires are secure. Again, we are trying to reduce any other further issues later on in the season. And again, freezing temperature actually also creates different expansion and compaction of that compression of that metal. So there's always that possibility that anything that is loose right now will get looser as we go through the winter time. So make sure that those are secured. And at the same time, who knows what's lurking when you are when you are not in the field? It could be a cattle that may be chewing your electrical system. So just make sure that they are secured, or a rodent that will gnaw those wires again and again. That's an issue later on. So any wild animals will be there as well.
And speaking of those rodents, when people are parking them, hopefully parallel to how the wind usually blows, is it sometimes important to not put them all the way up against a tree line?
That is correct. Yeah. So we are also trying to reduce the possibility for any of those rodents or any of those wildlife to be as close as possible to your system. Because again, if you did not properly drain them, they might find water in your system and they will try to get as close as possible, and so might cause any other issues later on. At the same time, rodents are looking for warmer bodies. Who knows, when the temperature goes up again, that metal might be the best place for them to hide or be below the tires. Again, just trying to avoid any other damage from the wildlife that we have over there. You are not going to visit that system for quite a while, so this is an opportunity for the wildlife to make home wherever they are.
What are some common things that you see sometimes get forgotten when it goes through the winterizing process for irrigation systems?
The most common, you might not believe it, but the most common is actually the draining. Just draining those drops, just draining those system. Because if there's any water that is left behind in any of those systems, let's say that there's a plug during the process and you were not able to drain it, it will expand, and by the time that you start your system again, voila, you've got showers everywhere. And you will find that, oh, I forgot to drain this system. And that's basically the common thing that is out there. So drain, drain, drain. If it is above ground, make sure that it's drained. If there has been a water there, make sure that you drain it. It's a very easy maintenance activity, but it may cost you a lot in terms of the damage that it could possibly do.
If producers feel like they've done all of their pre-winter prep well, is there any need to go check on it during the winter of what might be a sleet storm, an ice storm, a snowstorm?
Yeah, definitely. So we know that Mother Nature tries to throw anything on us during the winter time. It may be a freak wind burst, or a freezing temperature or freezing rain. So just from time to time, check your system for any other of those damage that Mother Nature may cause in our system. Again, we just want to make sure that it goes through the winter time, and at least it's gonna be ready and available by the time that Mother Nature give us another warmer season by the springtime.
Jonathan, if people have questions about this or want to find out more information, what's your recommendation?
So first of all, there are local dealership. So if they have actual questions on their system, they could visit their local dealership, because they are the ones that are actually could help them in terms of the mechanical issues that they might have. If they have other further questions regarding other matters, our county agents are also there within their counties, or we're always ready to answer any questions in our office. 620-275-9164 is our telephone number. I am based in Garden City, but I could certainly answer any call anywhere from the state.
Jonathan, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Thank you very much, and hopefully we will have a nice, safe, and wonderful what do you call that, a winter season in front of us.
That was K-State Water Resource Engineer Jonathan Aguilar. There is also an e-update article on this topic, which I will link in today's show notes on agtoday.net, as well as the phone number that Jonathan mentioned. We're cutting to a short break now, but we'll be right back. You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and we conclude our Friday show with a weather update from K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. Chip, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Chip, has all of Kansas now seen a hard freeze?
Just about. We're getting so close. All but far southeast Kansas has observed a hard freeze. And honestly, when we look at hard freeze, we're thinking like 28 degrees or less. A lot of places just touched it. This past weekend, we saw down into the upper teens. That was up in northwest Kansas, where they reached 19 degrees. The interesting thing is that we've had cool air every night, and the cool air is sinking, mostly focused down in these valleys and lower terrain. The air mass is just so thin. That cold air is just so thin. We're right above it. We do not have to get high, just a couple hundred feet off the ground, and the temperatures are a lot warmer. Because of that prevalent high pressure to our south, And so while we get cool, we warm back up pretty quickly. And granted, that's really played a role in the up and down temperatures we've seen over the last several days with frequent cold fronts. We have a cold front almost every other day. We have one on Sunday, one on Tuesday, one on Thursday. We're going to have another one on Saturday that'll be stronger. We'll talk about that in just a second. But these fronts are just pushing into that high pressure and the warmer air. Cold air sinks, right? So it's pushing underneath that warm air, but then that high pressure builds back in and winds over. And a lot of times you get breezy conditions at night, and that's allowing these temperatures to mix a little bit and keep our overnight lows warmer too. So despite a cool start, especially on Sunday morning, temperatures have been running at to above normal this week, and not by a great amount. And with the recent October in the mirror of really, really warm conditions, we continue to see, despite the temperature is gradually falling, we're definitely not as warm as we were 2 months ago, like we seasonally should. We're definitely continuing to run above normal.
With that cold front you mentioned we're going to see this weekend, how cold can we be expecting?
When we think about our temperatures running above normal, so far, is making these cold mornings feel colder. And there's a lot of talk, a lot of social media communication on this big cold blast that's coming for the eastern part of the United States and in the Central Plains this weekend into early next week. I would say a seasonable temperature blast. It's going to be below average by a couple of degrees. We'll see some highs on Sunday and Monday, especially only reaching the mid 40s if you're lucky. And those overnight lows are going to get down into the mid to low 20s. So we're looking at around 5-6 degrees below average for the most part. Our record lows, especially the northern part of the state, are in the low teens to near 10 degrees. So we're nowhere near record cold temperatures, but going to feel colder. And then we're also going to have wind with it too. It's a strong cold front. It's going to really set aside that push that high pressure off to our south and west and allow for a pretty potent pressure gradient. So we're going to see a lot of wind, especially in the afternoons when we start warming our air up at the surface and we mix it up, and that brings those stronger winds down. And that's going to result in some gusty winds over the weekend into early next week. When the winds start to calm down, especially Monday morning and Tuesday morning, we will be chilly again in those mid to low 20s. But then I think temperatures start to warm back up. The high pressure builds right back in by the middle of next week, and we see temperatures highs in the low to mid 60s and lows in the around that 40-degree mark, and we were above normal to go into the rest of the week. And so we've honestly been pretty blessed. Weather's been nice, mostly sunny skies, and that's the warmth of the fall sun feels good, knowing that we are slowly sliding into winter with gradually cooler temperatures.
Chip, through this weather update, you haven't mentioned any precipitation.
Dry weather has definitely been the rule. We're entering our driest time of the year, but still it's dry when we don't have any moisture. And honestly, when we look out in the forecast, our next opportunity is maybe around the 15th, 16th, 17th of November. But those chances look to be diminishing with every model run. So we'll keep our eyes tuned into the later part of November for maybe a pattern change that might be more favorable precipitation into December.
Chip, I appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yep, thanks for having me.
That was K-State meteorologist Chip Redmond. That's all we have for you this week on Agriculture Today, but we'll be back with more for you on Monday.